you, God. Not even you can protect it. Blessed be the name of Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
So that video right there is from when Shawn Michaels and God faced Shane and Vince McMahon, and that was in the promo leading up to the match. It was a tag team match. Really, it was a 2-on-1 handicap match with Vince and Shane versus Shawn. And it is something that I find interesting because I just watched the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix, and I really enjoyed it. I've watched wrestling on and off most of my life. I really started watching wrestling back in... So I watched a little bit of wrestling in 98, 99, 2000. Then I stopped for a little while. Then wrestling was on My TV, the network My TV. So I watched wrestling from 2008 to 2012. A lot of that Dolph Ziggler, Miz, Intercontinental Championship feud, stuff like that. And I saw a lot of the Mr. McMahon character and all of that, and on and off. I've watched some premium live events and pay-per-views, but not many. So the first episode really just talks about how Vince gets back into the wrestling business and gets it. It's cool. But the second episode was interesting. It talks about how Vince really likes heat. And basically he is somebody who will go and try to get heat and try to get people to hate him, because doing that allows people to want to sell tickets. I don't know if you've noticed this. This is something that some content creators are really good at, especially those who might consider rage baiters. They will rage bait somebody and they will generate heat because that brings out income. Now, unfortunately, there are issues where doing that can lead you into situations where you have like a Christian Andy Ditch Boogie 2988 situation. But the way Vince talked about it, he didn't care. He just absolutely didn't care. I wasn't really big into wrestling during the Screwjob era. It was just, I was a kid. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. This episode was really interesting because I did not know that Brett actually beat the crap out of Vince. But the fourth episode was the one that got really interesting. It's called Attitude. It's McMahon talking about the hate and heat generated by his heel persona in the Attitude Era with Stone Cold, The Rock, DX, China, all of them, and unfortunately it does get into Owen Hart's death, and Vince actually says in this, if it were me splattered all over the ring, I'd want the show to go on, and I don't really like that Vince said that. If it were me splattered all over the ring, and I were the owner of WWE, WWF at the time, I wouldn't want it. But I'm really, really frustrated by that. By Vince saying that, and it makes me really think that that's his real life. That's just who he is in real life, is somebody who doesn't care about talent. Hogan was somebody who was very interesting in this. Hogan was there a lot. Hogan talked about the Screwjob. Hogan talked about WrestleMania 3. Hogan talked about, what else did Hogan talk about? Hogan talked about all the ways that Vince would screw over wrestlers, and how Hogan helped screw over wrestlers because Hogan went to Vince about the unionization before WrestleMania 3. And then Hogan talked about how, even though he kind of left Vince and went to WCW, Vince still wanted him back. And then at WrestleMania X8, they had the Rock versus Hogan match. And I thought that was a pretty interesting perspective, to see Hogan's perspective. Hogan was in there, Tony Atlas was in the documentary, Stephanie was there for a little bit, Shane was there kind of for a few minutes. Hogan had a lot of the feature. Undertaker was in there. Stone Cold was in there, and we'll get to Stone Cold in a little bit. Talks about the family business in episode 5, the McMahon-Hemsley era, the lawsuit with WWF, John Cena coming up, the Ruthless Aggression era. Which was pretty cool. I enjoyed the Ruthless Aggression era. I thought the XFL originally was awful, and also the lawsuit by WWF, which makes sense. Just change it to WWE. And then Shane leaving in 2009. That was a kind of boring episode. Not much to talk about. But the last episode was really interesting. So they talk about all of the allegations against Vince. They talk about how Vince really wanted to do something big, and how Vince was like, what if we kill Mr. McMahon? And on a Friday Night SmackDown, Mr. McMahon did a walk past all the talent, goes into his limo, and it blows up. And because of that, everybody thinks Mr. McMahon's dead. Apparently, Donald Trump called Vince's office to ask if he was okay. Remember, the McMahons and the Trumps are friends. Um, Donald Trump's the only United States president to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Um, and then Chris Benoit dies, and they're doing the whole thing. But Stone Cold was in there, and this was really the first time he shows up. And Stone Cold says he doesn't believe in CTE. And he thinks that if you get hurt and you get concussions in wrestling, you're not doing it right. And I'm really confused by that. But Vince seems to at least acknowledge that CTE, because the researcher said that he actually worked with Vince and got money in there and came in and taught the wrestlers, which I know Vince probably did that with the intention of making more money because more sponsorships, all of that. But yeah, I really enjoyed how they did the last part of the episode where they talked about how Vince was having all these allegations. Vince actually canceled all of the interviews afterwards because of the allegations, and this came out September 25th, 2024. Um, and it's one of those things where it's yes, Vince McMahon and Mr. McMahon, I always thought were basically the same people. You could kind of see that when the Royal Rumble botch with Cena and was it Batista or Randy Orton? With that Royal Rumble botch where their both feet touched the floor at the same time, you saw Vince McMahon come out, but he was in his Mr. McMahon character, but also his Vince McMahon. It was a whole thing, and you could kind of see the whole thing. One thing I really enjoyed was talking about how WWE was really one of the first companies to initiate that wellness policy. No steroids, no physical attacks to the head like the chair shots, and toning down the level of violence, where that's not a thing we really saw in the NFL. The NHL's still fighting on CTE. Yeah, baseball's not got as much going on with CTE because there's not as much contact to the head and neck area. But baseball's even made concessions. They've changed sliding. And I really think that this is a good thing Vince did. Yes, it came out of tragedy with Chris Benoit, but that's a good thing Vince did. But what's really interesting me about the sexual misconduct and trafficking allegations against Vince, and yes, they are currently allegations as Vince has not been proven guilty of anything in a court of law. What I found interesting was that he canceled all of his interviews on the documentary afterwards, which made me feel really suspicious that he might be hiding something. And of course, the feds are going to look into it. They'll see everything that's going on and decide for themselves, is it good enough to go to trial? What's going on? Court of law, all of that stuff. But it felt suspicious. And then, of course, Pritchard being there and saying that this documentary sucked and it was all about making Vince look like a sociopath and evil really made me think that they thought this was going to be a way to protect Vince. And it wasn't. It showed all of the problems Vince has had throughout the years. Problems Vince has had. Vince was like, we didn't do any murders. People died. Owen Hart died. It wasn't criminal. Okay. But buried alive matches. They crucified Stone Cold on the Undertaker's symbol that one time. Um, there was sex in the ring. Edge and Lita's live sex celebration. Which I think that happened in 2006 on network TV. And Vince was saying during the documentary, we didn't do any of those things. We didn't do any of those things. And yes, the documentary just cut to them doing all of those things. But Vince, there was an easy way for them to not show that, and that was for you to have not done it. So overall, I would give this documentary a 9 out of 10. I think it was a really good documentary. I think it would have been better if it were a little bit longer and each episode had been able to take more time. Unfortunately, I understand the constraints in 6-7 hours of documentary, and when your main subject who had agreed to do interviews chooses not to. And of course, Vince actually denounced the documentary on Twitter the day before it came out as a smear job. So I totally understand the limitations they were under, but I would have liked to have a little bit more content and a little bit more interviews and possibly even some more modern talent. Like Cena and Trips were there. Cena and Triple H were like the modern talent that was there. It was a lot of Hogan. It was a lot of Hogan. And Triple H can't say too much because Triple H is the chief content officer for WWE right now.
I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch today's video, whether it was about the Mariners, sports predictions, or anything else that I have made videos about. I want to give you information about other channels where you can reach me. I'm on Patreon at Sammy5436 for $1 a month. Right now on Patreon, all that really gets you is access to Mariners recaps 12 or so hours before they are available on YouTube and TikTok. I'm also available on Instagram at Sammy54362 and at SamanthaP54361. That second one is a business account. I can be found on Cameo at Sammy5436. That is an account that I think you should definitely follow because right now cameos are $7 and they will be there for the foreseeable future because I right now understand that the economy is in a bit of a downturn. So if you want to support, I do appreciate that. You can also find me on TikTok at Sammy5436. I do also have 3 other YouTube channels that are linked to this channel. All of this information can be found linked in the video descriptions of every one of my videos for the most part, other than shorts. And for business inquiries, you can email me at SamanthaPond54361 at Outlook.com. I do want to advise you that for business inquiries, they do need to be professional, and as they come through to me, I will respond to them as I see fit. Anything that you have that is business related sent to that email will be reviewed and looked at by me. I generally take a look at my emails twice a week from that email account, though there are times where it is more frequent and times where it is less frequent. I also have premium content on a battle pass that's $4.99 a month. No, $5.99 a month, and you can find that you know where with the username Sammy5436. I'm also planning on potentially doing some live streaming at Sammy5436 on YouTube, on Twitch, on some other live streaming platforms, because I think that would be a great way for me to grow. Thank you for tuning in.